411 Live.
Where you can learn about issues that affect us every day. State of world, 411 Live.
Real people, real talk.
Made to help people in our community in every way. For your girl, 411 Live.
In today's political climate, you probably know more about judges and judicial decisions than you ever have before. There's so much going on. And when we focus on Milwaukee County, we know that there's a high incarceration rate among Black men. So what's happening in the criminal justice system, and what are the changes that might be coming? What's the future look like? Well, my guest today will give me some insight. Hello, everyone. I'm Beverly Taylor, and this is the 411 Live, Real People, Real Talk. I am very, very honored to have a very special guest, and that's Chief Judge Carl Ashley of the Milwaukee County Circuit Court. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Beverly. It's a pleasure to be here.
Let me tell you, I have bugged you so much to come on this show, on this podcast, to talk to me, because you are someone that I truly admire. I was so happy when you became the chief judge, being the first Black male to be in that post, and I think you were perfect for it. So I'm very happy about that. I hope things have been going well for you because, it's been about 3 years now? Almost?
No, two plus.
Two plus.
By the way, let me give a shout out to Judge Maxine White, my colleague, mentor, who was the first African-American chief judge in Milwaukee County in the state.
Yeah.
And she was a trailblazer, good friend of mine, and was a mentor.
Yeah. And speaking of her, when I came to Milwaukee as anchor reporter at Fox 6 News, she was one of my first interviews.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a coincidence.
Yeah.
Not a coincidence.
Yeah. But absolutely. So I'm glad you gave that shout out to her. There are a lot of things going on, and we didn't have a chance to kind of chat beforehand, and I'm just going to throw out a lot of things at you and we'll talk about. But I know, you have a lot of accolades and a lot of honors, and you talk to a lot of people, and you are highly admired. And I know that it's the judgeship, the legal system, but you're also very community-minded, which is really wonderful. So let's just dive into some of the things. First of all, what made you pursue law?
Well, I'm a little older than most people think. And so Perry Mason actually did impact me.
Yeah.
When I used to watch that show that came on.
Yeah.
And it was black and white. So people kind of get an idea how old I
Mm-hmm.
am. And I was enamored with that. Now, I have to tell you, being a lawyer was something I wanted to do, but I also wanted to be a pilot.
Okay.
And I built rockets, built model planes. When I went to Marquette undergrad in my junior year, I was going to go to the Air Force and become a pilot. But I had to take the flight physical, and I didn't pass the eye test. I had 20/25, and they said that's not good enough.
Wow.
And so that created my flip to being a lawyer, but that was the genesis of that.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Any regrets?
Oh, no. Well, I still admire pilots,
Yeah.
but no regrets. I
Yeah.
think that this opportunity for me was extraordinary.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know at the time how I would actually fall in love with being in the law. And subsequent to my being the first person in my family to become a lawyer, my sister became a lawyer.
Oh, wow.
My niece became a lawyer.
Yes.
And she's also a circuit court judge in Milwaukee County, Corey Ashley, and she is fantastic. Everybody respects her. She's been on the bench, really accomplished.
Mm-hmm.
My daughter's a lawyer.
Wow.
So we actually start kind of into the legal field. Not all of us, but there's a few of us. And so I think it's a good fit for me.
Excellent. Excellent. We had talked a while back about, there was a panel discussion with Strive 365, and we were talking about trauma. and we talked about trauma-informed justice and what that looks like, because trauma is everywhere. And I know you see it. How does that fit into how law is administered?
Well, just generally, trauma impacts so many people on so many levels.
Mm-hmm.
And we have so many people who've been traumatized and it has not been treated. And trauma doesn't go away. It is there. And it could evidence itself in many different ways to limit your ability to be successful in life. And as a society and as a judiciary, we're learning more about the impact on trauma in a practical way, but in a more overarching way. And for me, for example, Judge Mary Trajano and I taught being trauma-informed to our judges. We did a series of presentations to the judicial officers in Milwaukee County. I think it was well-intended and very important, not only to recognize that trauma impacts a person's ability to even understand what a judge is saying.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'm doing a sentence or I'm talking to someone. Someone may decompensate, be somewhere entirely different because something's been triggered in them,
Yeah.
because of something that has happened. And so we try to acknowledge that when someone reacts to you in court, they may not be purposely being disrespectful to you.
Mm-hmm.
They may not be purposely kind of looking over to the side and you're like, hey, are you paying attention to me? They may be disassociating because of something that happened or the things going on in the courtroom.
Yeah.
And that's important for judges to understand and for me to understand. I mean, I've been a judge for coming up on 26 years. In that time, I am not the same judge now that I was when I started.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Some of the things that I did, completely unaware of some of the impacts that trauma has on folks. It has helped me, though. For example, when I was in problem-solving court, I had a client, and problem-solving courts are like drug treatment, veterans treatment, mental health court. We have healthy infant court. We have adult dependency court. We have a lot of problem-solving courts, and those by their nature are, we're not going to give you the normal processes associated with what you did, but we're going to try to focus on creating an outcome that's better for you, supporting you while the court's supervising what's going on. So in drug treatment court, we know people with addiction, matched up with trauma, matched up with mental health issues. So I have a woman come into my courtroom. She's way out of sorts. My clerk says to me, Judge, so-and-so, something's wrong.
Yeah.
And I said, okay. My bailiff comes in and says, something's wrong with her today. Now, I'm sitting in my chambers. I'm not even out yet. But that kind of awareness. So when I come out on the bench, sure enough, she didn't curse me out, but she was very close to cursing me out in the courtroom.
Uh-huh.
Now, old Judge Ashley would have said, you don't disrespect the court. That is inappropriate. Deputy, take her into custody. That's an uninformed, trauma-informed judge.
Right.
But instead, I say, you know, ma'am, I don't know what's going on, but we're going to pass your case and have it come back, okay? What did I find out? She had been in an abusive domestic relationship with this guy for 20 years. She hadn't seen him in a while. He showed up in the courtroom. And as a result of that, she wasn't thinking about anything else. She wasn't trying to be disrespectful to me. Her trauma was triggered. And so just think, had I just arrested her, put her in lockup, the other members of that treatment court who saw that would have said, by the way, they always know everything. So they knew what was going on. How damaging would that have been? So instead, I find out who the guy is. I have my deputies get him and talk to him, get him out of the courtroom. We come back. She apologizes. Short story, she graduated from our program. She's now got her grandchildren that she's taking care of. That's being trauma-informed because I paused to try to figure out what was going on instead of just reacting. And that's an example of how being trauma-informed is important for our colleagues when they're dealing with folks, not to assume disrespect, not to assume that they're doing it purposely, but try to dig deeper. Oh, by the way, there are the times when they really are being disrespectful
Right.
too. So it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah, yeah. What popped in my head too was domestic violence victims, and when those cases come in, where maybe she has to testify against him, the perpetrator. And I mean, you talk about triggers and trauma, and if a judge is not aware of that, that can really go haywire.
Well, and I want to say that as far as domestic violence in a lot of our specialized courts, there's training now. I have to tell you that when I was initially on the bench, when I was a young judge, my chief judge says, I want you to go to domestic violence docket. And I said, okay. And he said, I want you to go some training in Florida on domestic violence. And I said, well, when do you want me to go, Chief? Oh, I can't go then because I'm going to the National College on Evidence. And it took a while to get that spot, so I can't go. And he looked at me and he said, oh, no, you're going.
Wow.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Mike Skarowski, very good judge, very good chief judge, just a wonderful person. When I got down there, I realized that some of the cases that I previously had that weren't assigned to the domestic violence court, that I did some horrible things to victims. Because I said, you know, ma'am, you know, you're part of the issue. You gotta report this. You shouldn't have waited so long. I'm glad you finally came. When I went to this training in Florida, the first thing I realized was, oh my gosh, it takes, based on the research, up to 7 times for a woman or a victim of domestic abuse, domestic violence, to get up the courage to come to court. So here I am telling this woman who has probably struggled to come in that it's sort of her problem.
Yeah.
You are part of this. I sat there in the training and went, you shouldn't be doing stuff without training. I ultimately became one of the trainers and was involved in teaching domestic violence nationally because of the importance I saw about making sure people, before you do this work, understand some of the dynamics of what's going on. Because I learned a whole lot, not only going to those sessions, but also teaching and talking to other people and also victims, what their thoughts were. And it's really important. To your point, education about what we're dealing with is extraordinarily important and meaningful so you have better outcomes for the people involved in these type of cases.
Yeah. Well, it's great to know that there are these specialty courts, you know, that are in Milwaukee County, which I did not know.
Yeah.
So that is great.
Yeah.
You're a chief judge. You were a judge before that designation. You were a lawyer. I think about when I was a reporter doing courts, reading all of the criminal complaints and reporting on those things. And there were things, as I'm reporting, I can say so much because some of it is just so horrifying that I couldn't even say it on air. And then I think about, okay, so then you have the judges who listen to this stuff, all the detailed evidence, you know, all the details over and over and over again. And I'm just like, how do they process that?
Very difficult to do. And I will tell you that understanding, it's called secondary trauma, vicarious trauma, so that it's not your trauma, but you live it, and it's vivid. And I know when I was in homicide, sexual assault, some of the cases that we had, some of the details, and some of the sexual assault cases that we heard in the facts, testimony, pictures were horrific.
Yeah.
I did my year in homicide, sexual assault, and I was going to do another year. And I told my staff, I'm going to ask to stay in this docket. And then my clerk and my court reporter said, Judge, can we talk to you? And I said, sure. Went back in chambers, and they said, we'll go where you want, but this has been extraordinarily difficult for us because we take it home. And it is impacting, outside of court, it's impacting my life. And I was like, okay, and I care about what you guys, I'm going to take that consideration. So I go home and I tell my wife, my staff is really concerned about me staying in homicide another year. And my wife and my daughters were in the room and they were like, it's affecting you too. And I was like, what? Oh, yeah, you are. Oh, absolutely it's affecting you. And so that was a realization to me that I had not been cognizant of how it impacted how I acted, what I was doing. And so it helped drive home the point that sometimes you can't see it and may take other people around you to recognize the impact of what you're going through. And vicarious trauma, secondary trauma is a real thing. To your point,
Yeah.
it does impact a person's ability to just be well.
Yeah.
And so acknowledging that and making sure you deal with that. And that's why we always talk when we did our training, what are some of the things to help your well-being? Are you getting away? Are you getting enough sleep? Are you exercising? What are the things you like to do?
Right.
Getting away from this.
That's
Talk to
self-care.
people. Self-care. Self-care.
Hey, we're going to pause, take a quick break, come back, and I will talk a little bit more with Chief Judge Carl Ashley. You're listening to the 411 Live. Stay with us.
I debate all day. It's what I do. But there are some things that are undebatable, like your mental health. I was in a dark place when my brother passed away in a car accident. I was depressed in ways I never imagined. I reached out, and my sisters came, my pastor, my therapist. They helped me get through it. I found that the more I spoke up, the healthier my mind became. When you love your mind, you can go so much further. Find mental health resources at loveyourmindtoday.org.
Okay, so before we come over, can I ask a few questions?
Yeah, sure.
Do you have any pets?
Yes, we have a dog, but she's little.
Do you have any unlocked guns around the house?
We do have a gun, but it's stored securely, locked in a safe that the kids can't access. I appreciate you asking.
Yeah, of course. So does Friday work?
Sounds good to me.
All right, we'll bring pizza.
Welcome back to the 411 Live. I'm talking with Chief Judge Carl Ashley. And we were talking about trauma and the stuff that folks go through. And I'm just thinking about, family court. I'm sure that's something too. Because right now I'm a mediator and I mediate cases for family court, child custody, child placement. And I know how emotions run high. But I'm sure in family court, they run really high.
Yeah, family court, and I want to distinguish children's court, where we're dealing with allegations of abuse or neglect, versus family court, and it's our designation, where it's divorces,
Right.
paternity issues. But I think you were talking more like
Family,
family court, not children's court. I just want to make that distinction. For
But I
everybody.
did cover child molestation and stuff as a reporter. And that
It's, yeah.
is crazy.
And as a matter of fact, my staff later, when I asked them, would you rather go to homicide, sexual assault, or to children's court, they said homicide, sexual assault, rather than going out. And you know how they felt about it. So you give you an idea of how emotionally involved it is to be in that. Back to the issue of family court. I think one of the things in family court that was most important, the hierarchy to me, was children. And, in the old days, I was like, oh, can't you stay together? Why don't y'all stay together and be married? Y'all can work it out. They ain't had that thought. But the fact of the matter is, particularly in family court, sometimes people need to get a divorce.
Yeah.
That it just didn't work. And it doesn't mean that they are necessarily at each other's throats. It just didn't work. And they can be, joint parenting of the children and be friends, but it just didn't work for them to be married. Now, sometimes it's a little worse than that. But I will tell you, fighting for kids where the kids become secondary to winning. If you ever wanted to get me concerned about what your motives are,
Yeah.
let me feel that you are disregarding what's impacting your children over just saying, I'm winning this, which is very difficult. And the things that children have to endure doesn't have to be that bad, but people can create more negative consequences for their children by not prioritizing them. That's one of the things I carried with me into that doc. And I told the litigants when they come in, look, I will notice if you don't put your kids first. And I'm not saying how the outcome needs to be, but I will notice if you make your kids secondary and their welfare secondary. So I appreciate that you're mediating to help
Yeah.
get some of those resolved, because it's always better to have the parties come to an agreement mutually. One thing, it's extraordinarily expensive to litigate. But secondarily, when you fight, it creates more problems from everybody involved, particularly kids.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
The other topic, incarceration among Black men from Milwaukee County, high. And you know, I always say, okay, we send, you know, they go to jail, they go to prison, but when they come out, they're going to come out unless they committed something, you know, really heinous.
95% are gonna get out.
95%.
Yeah.
So what happens when they come out? Do you think we have enough things in place to help them make that transition? Is it something that we should be doing? What are your thoughts on that?
To your point, public safety, I want to back up a little bit and talk about public safety. And it's a really important element in a judge's analysis on what a sentence should be. You look at the seriousness of the offense. What happened? How egregious was it? Was it life, death, injuries? How serious was it? And then you look at the character of that person who committed that offense. What are the issues that person has, redeeming qualities, things that exacerbate prior record, other things, how they are adjusting to what they did, are they taking responsibility? And then public safety is huge. And judges have to be mindful that sometimes when things happen, even if you don't have a large record, sometimes you do things that simply require some significant consequence to address what occurred in the community and with that family. But on the other hand, we should be more cognizant of what you're pointing out. Public safety is a longer continuum, because long-term public safety means that if someone is going to prison, and most people don't go to prison that long, because the maximum isn't that high on what they've done. So they're going to get out, and some reasonably fast. And by that, I mean 5, 6 years, something like that. How are they going to be when they get out?
Yeah.
What's the likelihood that they're going to reoffend? What is the likelihood that they're going to put somebody else at risk again? So to your point, it would be much better for long-term public safety to provide people the tools to be successful when they get out. All right? And it's kind of difficult because I think we'd like to put more services available to them. Most services while you're in prison, you can't get them until you're just about to get out, because there's just not enough. So there's a pecking order. You're like, you're getting out here, you're getting out here, you have to wait, but we'll get you this now. So we do know there's limitations on what kind of resources they have to give those services. It would be much more meaningful to get those folks those services as soon as possible, help them prepare for exiting out. So when we talk about public safety, the reality is we want to balance those two things. Short-term, the consequences, looking at the things we have to, but also looking at making sure that long-term public safety is making sure that we give that person a reasonable opportunity to be successful when they get out. And working in problem-solving courts where someone is in like drug treatment for 18 to 2 years, I really got to know people. I got to know, and Judge Mary Trajano used to always talk, my chief judge before me, my good friend, she's doing restorative justice at Marquette University Law School. What happened to you? Okay? The question is, if you've done these behaviors, what happened to you to cause you to do that? And we need to dive into that. And when I was in problem-solving court, I had a chance to look at the dynamics of someone's environment, their life, their family, their constellation of who they were with. And let's face it, a lot of people have very little chance to be successful because they don't have the support mechanisms that some of us I mean, we were very blessed in my family. My father passed when I was a freshman in high school, but I will tell you, work ethic, school, right and wrong, those things, you can't pick your parents. You can't pick the environment in which you grow up into. But as a community, we need to be more assertive about making sure kids and families are given the opportunity to have a different trajectory than what they're on.
Yeah.
And if we do that, that's the long term. I mean, people talk about reckless driving, and it's horrible. It's horrible. We're appalled. It's destroying families. It's causing death and trauma in our community, and it affects so many people so negatively. And we need to have people held accountable. But we need to go upstream and try to make sure we can provide families and our youth a better opportunity to be successful. Because we know if we don't engage them and provide them with the tools to how to deal with conflict, how to deal with making better decisions, they're going to end up hurting people. And we'd rather not have them hurt anybody, and we'd rather have them have better outcomes. So if we just realize that the courts have to do their job, they certainly do, but the community needs to realize that as a whole, we need to understand that we're not going to jail or prison our way out of where we are. We've got to provide people opportunities to have better outcomes.
Amen. Amen. That's all I can say. Amen. So, in the last minute.
Do I have a minute?
I know, it goes fast.
Well, can I talk
doesn't it?
about my birthday? No, I'll let you go. I'm sorry, Beverly. You do your thing.
No. Anything you'd like to leave us with?
I want to talk about mental health.
Yeah.
And it's a huge problem. I know that many people are working on this. Shakita McLean, the head of the Department of Human Services in Milwaukee County, does an extraordinary job in her leadership. And they are trying to make sure we can provide more resources. But we need to figure out how people who have mental health issues are addressed not in the criminal justice system, but rather outside of that justice system. Because our prisons and jails are by default our biggest mental health institutions. And there's so many people that we can treat and support and not allow them to fall into the criminal justice system. And so that's one of the things I'm really focused on.
Wow. That's a big one.
It is huge. But we're working on it. A lot of things going on.
Okay.
I'll have to come back and talk to you about that someday.
Do that.
Okay.
Open door policy for you.
You say that now. Who's at the door? Lock it.
Judge, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for joining me.
You're very welcome. Thanks for the opportunity.
Chief Judge Carl Ashley joining me today. And thank you for joining us for another episode. Remember, we're a nonprofit organization, so if you'd like to partner with us, go to our website, the411live.org. Until next time, I'm Beverly Taylor. This is the 411 Live, real people, real talk. God bless. If you would like to check out past episodes, there are many ways. Go to your favorite podcast platform. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Like and watch us on Facebook. Watch and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you have suggestions for future episodes, go to our website, the411live.org.